This week I'm heading back to the farmer's market to sell flowers to see if I can continue to make a success of it despite the fact that I don't have many of the flowers that I've grown myself to sell at this market. Last month I made £700 profit at this market despite the fact there was rain in the forecast, and it was my first time back at this market since 2019. However, the odds were stacked against me again this month with a bad forecast and even less of my own flowers to harvest. I was going to have to rely on wholesale flowers, but could I still make it work and make a decent profit out of it? Keep watching to find out. Preparations for this Sunday farmers market started earlier on in the week when I started planning which flowers I could cut that I'd grown myself and what I'd have to buy in. I was worried about how much to take with me since the forecast for the weekend wasn't looking good, and because I was buying in, the loss on unsold flowers would be much greater than any flowers I'd grown and cut myself. When I was at my old farm, I was able to put unsold flowers for sale at my driveway flower shed and usually sell them off, but this isn't an option now. So I settled on taking 50 bouquets to the market, which I'd sell at £20. This was a little less than I took last time, but last time I brought home 17 unsold bouquets and I didn't want to be in that position again. I thought that taking 50 bouquets would still be a bit of a risk, but less so than trying to sell 100. I was hoping that the average price of flowers I would buy in would be around £1 a stem, and I was looking to buy and pick around 750 stems. The first choice for me when buying flowers in is from my friend Hattie, whose farm I'm lodging at this year. We both grow very similar flowers and have high standards of flower quality, but Hattie is a busy lady and she had her own weddings and events to provide herself with that week, meaning I had to keep looking elsewhere. I managed to get some wonderful flowers from Beth at the Lilac Isle, who was growing some great celosia and zinnias among other things. I then ordered the rest of the flowers in from a large British wholesaler which included snapdragons, larkspur, delphiniums, hypericum, Canterbury bells, feverfew and scabious. Apart from the wholesale flowers costing more, there's another reason why I don't usually like to buy from large wholesalers, and that's the plastic wrap that they come in. I grow and sell my flowers in as much of a low impact way as possible, growing regeneratively and being plastic free. Reducing plastic consumption is not just something I do in business but in my personal life too. I've partnered with Wild, who've recently released this new refillable roll-on deodorant. These beautiful aluminium cases, which can be personalised by the way, are refillable with 4 amazing scents. I've been using Wild products for a while now and the scents are always amazing in all of their products. I also love that the ingredients are natural and aluminium free. Wild also plants a tree every time you buy one of their products, and so far they've saved £1.6 million of single-use plastic from landfill. The new roll-on deodorant dries really fast, so when I'm in a rush and I'm leaving for the farm in the morning, I know that I can put it on and it's going to dry quickly and not leave any white marks behind. So if, like me, you want to reduce your plastic consumption but you still want the long-lasting protection from your deodorant, then switch to Wild. The guys at Wild have given me a 20% discount code to share with you guys. Just enter the word BLOOM at checkout or scan the QR code on screen, or I'll put a link to the discount code in the description. This discount code isn't going to last forever, so make sure you get your 20% off before it's too late. Last month I had lots of flowers at the market, but I wasn't quite happy with the way they turned out. I ordered in lots of sunflowers to use as focal flowers, but it didn't really feel like my style, so I was hoping what I'd ordered this time was going to give off a little more Bloom and Grey vibes. Flowers secured, I started market prep on Thursday when I spent an hour or two prepping paper wraps for my bouquets. Then the next day it was time to start gathering the flowers. I received my big wholesale delivery, which had to be unwrapped and put into water as soon as possible, and then I headed over to Hattie's to pick flowers from my own patch and collect some that I was buying from her. My niece, who was visiting from overseas, came with me and she loved running around the flower fields while we picked. Then on Saturday morning I picked up the last of the bought-in flowers and I was ready to get making. I was so happy with how all of the flowers looked together, and I was really excited to start putting some bouquets together using these gorgeous ingredients. Bouquet making was going well for most of the day until I started realising that the bouquets were getting more and more expensive to make as the day went on. I had to throw away around 60 stems of flowers which weren't going to make it through the day, never mind a week in the vase, which increased the average cost per stem used. I then started running out of focal flowers. It was tempting to add more stems to the bouquets to fill them out, but with an increasing price per stem I really couldn't afford to do this. I was worried I wouldn't be able to sell the bouquets for what they were worth because of the lack of focal flowers, but I made them up anyway because I needed to sell. So by the end of the day, I'd managed to make 45 bouquets. If I charged £20 and sold all of the bouquets, I would have turned over £900. But I spent £700 on buying flowers in from wholesalers. And on top of that, I had to add in my stall fee plus my labour, which was adding up to around 10 to 15 hours by that point, plus my fuel costs. So it was quickly looking like I was going to make a loss, especially if I didn't sell everything. And the rain was still in the forecast, so I had that to worry about as well. That night I decided to reevaluate what I was charging for the bouquets. I was going to charge £20 across the board for all of my bouquets, but what I decided to do in the end was charge £25 for the bouquets that had the dahlias in, that looked a little bit better quality and a little bit more value for money, and then I decided to charge £22 for everything else. So if I managed to sell everything, then I would be able to turn over £1,023 at the market, which would make it a little more worthwhile. The next morning I got my van packed up and I headed to the market. I'm not going to lie, I was feeling a little despondent and I was wondering if this was all worth it. I was going to spend almost 3 days working for not a lot of gain. One thing I was pretty happy about was the way the bouquets looked. I definitely feel like I'd got the bloom and grave vibe nailed this time, and I was happy to be introducing myself to new customers with these flowers. Also, the weather was holding off so far. It was spitting on and off, but it didn't seem to put the customers off. There were plenty of people walking around the market and popping into the stall. But I was still nervous because I had to sell a lot of bouquets just to break even. So the only thing on my mind that morning was just to sell enough flowers to cover the costs to the wholesalers. About a third of the way through the market, I'd sold a third of the flowers, which I was happy about. Customers were happy to pay what I was charging for the flowers, and I was able to confidently set my pricing knowing what it cost to make them. It seemed like there were a lot of people at this market that were just browsing and walking around. I had considered lowering my prices at one point, but I don't think people were being put off by the prices. I just don't think they were interested in buying anything. Then by 11:30 I broke even, and I was so happy that I wasn't having to dip into my pocket to pay the wholesalers. I could even let my time go as a lesson learned if I didn't sell anything else that day, but hopefully I would. The day carried on and the bouquets were leaving the stall slowly but surely. By the final hour it went really quiet, so I decided to have an end of day sale. And by closing time I had just 2 bouquets left. It was great not to be taking lots of flowers home with me. So, was it worth it? Well, all in all, I turned over £973 and I spent £700 on flowers. Then you've got to add in the cost of the stall, which was £50, and I'm estimating around £40 on fuel. Then my labour, which was around 20 hours of labour, and then a small amount for the paper wrapping, etc. So the answer is no, it probably wasn't worth it. Last month I made lots more profit at the market because I had lots of my own flowers to sell, and that is the difference. I think that if I thought about it, I would probably be able to produce my own flowers for a third to a quarter of the cost of flowers that I was buying in. And from this exercise I've found a newfound respect for florists who are having to buy flowers in. I can appreciate how difficult it is. And it's also given me an even keener eye on the true cost of producing and selling flowers for a living. But there's a final aspect to think about, and that is the exposure to the business that the farmers market gives me. I had lots of people asking me about wedding flowers, and I know from experience that when I have workshops available online, then people usually go home and have a look at them and book onto one of them in the future. If not, book something that evening when they've seen the flowers, they liked them, and they impulsively want to book onto something. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. You had some really interesting insights last time. And if you want to know more about flower farming, then I've just returned from a really exciting trip down south and I visited 4 amazing growers and I interviewed them for my new farm tour series. So don't forget to subscribe if you want to check out those episodes. They are absolutely chock full of really great information from some really experienced growers. So I encourage you to subscribe and you'll be notified when those videos come out in the next few weeks. Thank you again for watching this video and I'll see you on the next one.